Welcome back to Explain America. This is your host, Kyle Becker. We have been following a case which a heavy heart here at Explain America, and that is the one of Ukrainian refugee Irina Zarudska, who was savagely stabbed on a train in the Charlotte, North Carolina area. And the harrowing video has just been released. The longer cut was sent to me, and I was able to review it. 18 minutes long. It is shocking to the conscience because there is even a darker side to this story than what we saw with the sadly viral video that exploded onto the media. And that was when a heinous criminal who had been released 14 times by a apparently Kamala Harris supporting Democrat judge in Charlotte, well, we saw that video, right? And it was just disturbing beyond belief. And it's even worse than we thought because what the crowd did afterwards is just sickening, to say the very least.
Now from Washington with the latest. Maddie?
Good morning, guys. Yeah, this is a really sad story. Irina Zarudska was killed last month, almost exactly 3 years since she moved to the U.S. from Ukraine to escape the war. Surveillance video now shows what happened before the attack. Zarudska is seen getting on a light rail in uptown Charlotte, and she sits directly in front of the suspect. Investigators say about 4.5 minutes later, that suspect pulls a knife from his pocket, stands up, and stabs Zarudska 3 times. He has been identified as 34-year-old DeCarlos Brown Jr. It does not appear that he and Zarudska knew each other. Records show Brown has a criminal history spanning more than a decade. He's been arrested for felony larceny, robbery with a dangerous weapon, assaulting a woman, among other charges. The crime is once again shining a light on the revolving door where local judges don't do enough, as some say. Here's President Trump talking about the case.
There are evil people, and we have to confront that. I just give my love and hope to the family of the young woman who was stabbed this morning or last night in Charlotte by a madman, a lunatic, just got up and started. It's right on the tape. We're going to get to the end of it. And, you know, when you have horrible killings, you have to take horrible actions.
Federal agencies are getting involved. FBI Director Kash Patel says they've been investigating Zarudska's murder since day one. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy says his department is also looking into Zarudska's death.
I can't pull money today from their transit system. I actually have to do an investigation. That's what the law requires. We start that investigation tomorrow, and I guarantee all your viewers that if I find what I think I'm going to find, they are not going to have your federal tax dollars going to their public transportation system. Zero, none, nada.
The Charlotte area transit system now says it's planning to implement more safety measures, including adding more security and contracted officers.
And Donald Trump, well, his administration is taking action on this, and we're going to get into this story. But before we do that, please like, share, and comment at Explain America. Join us. We appreciate your support for common sense journalism. Now, Irina Zarudska, she was a Ukrainian refugee, and she was minding her own business on a train in the Charlotte area when just an absolute monster walked up behind her, stabbed her, and we're not going to show the video because it's too graphic. But he said, you know, I got that white girl a few times on there. It was clearly racially motivated, but apparently only the left is allowed to be mad about allegedly racially motivated crimes. And they usually twist the facts and leave out information that makes it look worse than it actually is. You know, people resisting arrest and, you know, committed crimes or on controlled substances. So that is not the case here. Irina was an innocent victim on a seemingly random attack. And this man obviously was mentally disturbed. He had a lot of issues. And that is something that we can address at a public policy level. Well, FBI Director Kash Patel is opening up an investigation into this crime. And I believe that it could qualify as a hate crime on top of everything else. And, you know, we saw that with the Catholic school shooting in Minneapolis, the Annunciation Catholic school where two babies their lives were snuffed out. And, the press suppressed the motivations of the shooter in that case, and because it was documented in a diary. And, again, it's all very dark and morbid and sad, but what happened in this case is really shocking, because the people just watched after she had been stabbed, and she was crying and bloody and just sitting on the seat, and nobody helped her. They just got up from the train and went about their business like nothing had happened. And this is what happens in socialist countries. Just to get a little bit political here, the dehumanization and the demonization eventually takes a toll on people, and apathy leads to atrocity. And that is what is happening in some of these blue cities. And Donald Trump is trying to give them hope by mobilizing and sending troops into these cities and law enforcement surges to show the people that we care about you, and we're going to protect your lives the best we can, and we're going to remove violent criminal elements out of your communities, whether that be gang members or that cartel members or criminal aliens. They have been so dehumanized for a long time, and they have a kind of Stockholm syndrome where they just keep voting for Democrats, expecting them to change. All of their empty rhetoric, a lot of people have believed it over the years. And I think we're at a tipping point where people have stopped believing them. The thing that needs to happen is people need to stop feeling like they're helpless. That is the goal of a lot of this demoralization that the radical left tries to push onto Americans. They're trying to make them feel helpless. But they need to be upset with the Democratic Party and also those in the Republican Party that betray voters and don't do what they promise in their election campaigns, because there are actions that we can take, and we need to take it while we can. And one of the things we need to do is protect innocent people like Irina Zarutska, because she's like any of us. I've ridden the metro in big cities, New York City, for example, and I avoided the subway. That is for sure. I saw some harrowing things out of there that add up to what I saw in this video. And so these cities have become absolutely rotten, and the Democrats that have presided over it, they want the status quo. They don't want Donald Trump to come in there and shake things up. They don't want him to expose them for the heartless and feckless and cruel overlords of these cities that they are, because they have the Soros judges and prosecutors that release people. And in this case, a violent criminal was released 14 times by a Kamala Harris-aligned judge. It's part and parcel of what happens in cities across the United States. It is not just Charlotte. You see it in Houston, Texas. You see it in San Francisco and Los Angeles and New York City, Detroit, New Orleans even. And you see it over and over again. And, you say you can't incarcerate your way to public safety. That's a big lie. You incarcerate criminals. They are responsible for their behavior. There is another way to live, and that is not stabbing innocent people on a train. And, this is a very sad story, but at least the Trump administration is taking strong, aggressive action to try to prevent this from happening to anyone again. And FBI Director Kash Patel, he's on the case. He's doing what he can. And the Trump administration should really get some credit for finally doing something about an epidemic of crime that has been in this country for over a decade now. And, no president has seemed to take as decisive action as the current president, Donald Trump, is doing now. So weigh in with your thoughts. We always appreciate hearing from you at Explain America.
I think everyone knows the facts of this case, but I will briefly recitate what is in our criminal complaint. And that is that at 9:55 on August 22nd, Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department responded to a call that there had been a stabbing on a light rail train. They located the victim, who had suffered stab wounds in her neck, on her hand. They found a pocket knife on the scene, and they apprehended the defendant at the rail stop. Now, much more recently, the surveillance video was obtained from the train, and that's really what gave us the basis for federal charges here. And the surveillance video shows Irina Zarudska getting on the train by herself in her work uniform, sitting down by herself in a row that just happened to be in front of DeCarlos Brown Jr. Approximately 4 minutes later, Mr. Brown pulled out a pocket knife. You see him on video open that pocket knife, and he stabbed her 3 times in the neck. He then walked off the train with blood dripping from the knife. This is obviously a horrible, horrible situation. But this is why federal statutes exist. They exist to take care of situations like this because no one should sit in fear when they sit on the light rail.